It was a cold, dreary evening, and Sara found herself alone in her new apartment. She had recently moved into a historic building, one of those old, grand structures that had seen better days, but still held an undeniable charm. The creaking floors and dimly lit hallways only added to its character, or so she told herself. She was trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled over her since the move. The apartment was cheap, which was exactly what she needed, but something about it didn't sit right with her. It had started the first night she spent there. Sara had put the final box in her bedroom, turned on the lamp, and tried to settle in. It was only after she lay down to sleep that she heard it, the faintest of sounds, the unmistakable tap, tap, tap of footsteps echoing from the hallway. She dismissed it as the old building settling, as she'd read that's a common occurrence in buildings of this age. But that night, the footsteps seemed to come closer, almost as if someone was walking directly outside her bedroom door. A chill ran through her, but she convinced herself it was just her imagination, perhaps the wind causing the walls to creak. But the footsteps didn't stop. The following nights were much the same. Every time she was about to drift into sleep, the sounds would start. Soft, rhythmic, slow, as though someone was pacing the hallways just outside her room. It was always the same pattern. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. Then silence. She'd lie awake, her heart pounding in her chest, unsure whether to investigate or stay hidden under her covers, hoping whatever it was would just go away. One evening, after another long day at work, Sara came home late. The lights in the hallway flickered as she stepped inside, and a sudden chill filled the air. She noticed immediately that the building felt different, quieter, more oppressive. It was almost as if the weight of the silence itself was pressing down on her. She made her way up the stairs, the usual creaks of the floorboards beneath her feet amplified in the stillness. When she reached her door, she hesitated for a moment, the eerie feeling creeping back up her spine. She could have sworn she heard faint footsteps from within the apartment. But that was impossible. She hadn't left anyone inside. With a sense of dread, Sara pushed open the door. The apartment was dark, save for the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. She closed the door behind her, turned on the lights, and froze. The sound of footsteps had stopped. But now there was something else, a faint scraping sound, as if something was dragging across the floor, just beyond the living room. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and dust, and it felt colder inside than it should have been. Taking a deep breath, Sara decided to investigate. She walked cautiously into the living room, her eyes scanning the dark corners, half expecting to see some hidden figure standing in the shadows. But there was nothing, just the flickering of the old lamp on the coffee table and the empty room. The scraping sound started again. It was closer now. Her pulse quickened and she felt her feet move against her will, drawn toward the back of the apartment. There, at the far end of the hall, was a small door that led to the building's old storage closet, a place Sara had never bothered to check. The scraping was coming from behind that door. Her breath hitched. She couldn't ignore it any longer. Slowly, her hand reached for the doorknob. As she twisted it open, the cold air hit her face, and she recoiled for a second, heart racing in her chest. But then she stepped inside. The small room was bare, save for a few dust-covered boxes. No scraping noise, no footsteps, just silence. Sara let out a shaky sigh, telling herself it had been nothing. Maybe the wind, maybe the building's old pipes. But as she turned to leave, something caught her eye. A single footprint etched in the dust on the floor. A large, boot-like print. Sara's blood ran cold. She had never been in that room before. No one had been in there. And yet, there it was, a fresh footprint, as though someone had walked across the room just moments ago. She turned quickly, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end, and then she heard it again. The footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer from the hallway. Her heart was pounding now. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until it felt as though whoever was walking was just behind her. Without thinking, Sara bolted for the front door, but as she reached for the handle, it wouldn't budge. She pulled harder, desperate. Something was blocking the door. And then, as if from nowhere, the door creaked open, and Sara was thrown backward, crashing into the floor. Her breath was coming in ragged gasps, her eyes wide with terror. She scrambled to her feet and looked around. The apartment was no longer empty. Figures were standing in the doorway, their faces pale and blurred, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Shadows, their outlines shifting as though they didn't belong. The footsteps had stopped. A voice whispered, faint but clear, from the dark figures. "Leave. Now." Sara didn't hesitate. She ran out of the apartment and down the stairs, hearing the footsteps chasing her all the way. She never returned to that building. The landlord claimed that the apartment had been empty for years, but Sara knew better. There was something in the walls, something in the shadows that never let go, and every now and then, when the wind howls just right, she can still hear those footsteps, echoing faintly from far away.